We're currently switching hosts for today. This is James G. Battelle interviewing G. Patrick Battelle, and I'd like to ask him some questions about why he came away from Roman Catholicism and ended up embracing biblical Christianity. My first question to you would be, with 4 generations of Roman Catholics in the family and 3 priests that we know of, that's quite something.
Well, you're absolutely right, James. As you know, being Catholics in our family going back some 3 or maybe even 4 or 5 generations, and I, like them, was very much a practicing Catholic, took it all very, very seriously. Perhaps a little bit more of a Catholic than other Catholics. The fact that I went to Mass every day, was very much involved in the church where I worshipped. Mass on Sundays, I was on the Liturgy Committee, the Justice and Peace Movement, the Deanery Pastoral Council, and assorted other bodies. So, yes, I was very much involved with Catholicism.
And we should say that you actually went to church every day in the week. That's 5 days a week, a Saturday evening, and occasionally on a Sunday as well.
Sometimes twice on a Sunday.
So it wasn't just a Sunday visitor to the local church.
And I also participated in benediction, which I think ex-Catholics will know what I mean, and of course the Rosary.
And you were such a very big part of of our local church that you were commissioned to write a book about the history of our local church, or our former local church, I should say.
Yes, in the town I lived in, it was the oldest church in the town, and I was asked by the parish priest at the time to start writing a book on this church, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'd known many of the priests, and I saw it very much as a labour of love. Still in print, as far as I know.
And what brought about you coming out of the Roman Catholic Church? What were the circumstances behind that?
I think, like all processes, it's a very slow, gradual process, rather like toothache, isn't it? The pain starts very gently and then starts to build up. The next thing, you're phoning the dentist. But with me, it was a very slow process. I'd always had some doubts about the Catholic Church, particularly in the mysterious death of John Paul I. I remember when this book came out in the mid-'80s, and I had my doubts then about the hierarchy. I suppose I was in no doubt about these men. These were very powerful men. And was murder possible in the Vatican? I certainly thought so, although the Catholics I spoke to rolled their eyes in horror and said that would never happen. But really, in round about the mid-'80s, I started to question some of the aspects of it. I'd heard a New Zealand preacher who I thought was very good. He had touched on some conspiracy theories, but he introduced me to something I'd never heard of before, and that was, of course, the wonderful rapture.
And of course, the Roman Catholic Church, as we know, don't hold to the rapture as such, nor do they hold to the millennium. So with these new views of the rapture, the millennium, and also the good news that the Church of Jesus Christ will not go through the Great Tribulation, you have some very good news to feed back to your friends in the local Catholic Church. What was their reaction?
Yes, absolutely. I was telling my friends, and I can see them now, as I told them the wonderful news of the rapture, that the church would not go through the Great Tribulation, that we would be taken out of it. And they looked at me in absolute horror, as if I told them the present Queen of England wasn't the Queen of Order at all, but was a cleaner who was sort of doing an impersonation of the Queen. This, I think, is one of the tragedies of the Catholic Church. They do, of course, accept the Antichrist is coming, the false prophet. They have to accept everything ends, even this age has to end. But we, of course, would say that the true church, the church of the living saints, will not go through that awful period of the Great Tribulation.
And what was the response from church friends and associates that you had known there for 15 years? How did they take to this?
Well, you remember the Cardinal well yourself. I think you got on very, very well with him. He was a very charming man, and I wish we had been able to ask him some of these questions. Unfortunately, we weren't in the position then to ask him. We didn't know the answers or the questions. But yes, I spoke to many Catholics at the time and told them all this. Some of them showed an interest, but not enough to sort of want to know more about it. I, of course, wanted to know a lot more about it. And, of course, once I read Paul's graphic description in 1 Thessalonians, it all seemed to make sense to me. And that wonderful line at the end, comfort one another with this, that you will not go through the tribulation. So after that, I was hooked onto that. And after that, I began to see things about the Catholic Church that I didn't like. The fact that the Mass had to be repeated daily. The sacrifice of the Mass had to be repeated. Why? Christ had paid the price, and he'd paid it once. In fact, anyone who pays a price pays it once. You don't keep on paying it, do you? So I question the essence of the Mass, which I begin to think was actually blasphemous. It was rather like a magician who not only has to pull a rabbit out of a hat, but here you have a priest who had, in a magical, satanic sort of way, is able to pull Christ down from heaven and hold him in his hands and say, "This is my body." What's going on here?
And of course, during this whole period, I remember you giving out Bible tracts every Saturday,
correct,
which you did whilst you were still going to the local Catholic church.
Yeah.
Something which Catholics do not do. And I think several times you bumped into members of your church. What was their reaction when they saw you giving out gospel tracts?
Yeah, that's correct, James. In about the mid-1980s, I started to buy some tracts, and I had to find where to buy some tracts, and I started giving tracts out. A good friend of mine from the church came along, and he helped me to give tracts out. And I remember one of the ladies of the church, a stalwart of the church, who probably went to Mass more times than I did, came along and watched me, and she said, "I think you're doing a marvellous job here." She didn't offer to give any out herself, but yes, I started giving tracts out where and when I could, phone boxes, libraries, friends, even Catholics, still doing it to this day.
And one thing that we should also say concerning this particular woman that we know quite well, how ignorant she was when she told you that they had an Islamic imam going to the church to speak on interfaith affairs, and how shocked you were at this, and you made contact with her and you told her some of the Islamic views which they hold to, and of course Mary is mentioned in there, and she was very dismissive of what you had to tell her.
Well, this church that I went to, it was a very old church, but they had what they call the Lady Altar, as a representation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, as they call her, always very heavily surrounded each day with fresh flowers, I may say. Not artificial flowers, but fresh flowers. And in the town I lived in, there was a very large Hindu community. She, of course, is one of the goddesses, I believe, in the Hindu church. So it was very frequent to see little clusters of Hindus in a Catholic church standing around the Lady Altar, uttering prayers in Hindu, I suppose. Then, as you say, this lady told me that one of the mullahs was coming to the church to talk. This is all part of the interfaith, which the Catholic Church is very much involved in, and I dare say she's doing all the running to promote it, and very much so. We'll come to Fatima, maybe. And she told me the mullah was coming, and I said, "Wonderful," and I said her name. "You can tell her that Jesus is the Son of God," I said, "because they don't accept that. In their opinion, he's just a minor prophet." How degrading, how insulting. And she went very quiet. She said, "I'll have to talk to the priest about this." And I never heard another word from her.
Please also share with us how one of our old friends, a former priest that we've known for several years now, who's now left, he's no longer a priest as such, but unfortunately still a practicing Catholic. Please explain to us in the last couple of minutes how he has responded to your biblical Christianity.
Well, one thing Catholics never really forgive is a priest who leaves the Catholic Church. He's the sort of persona non grata, as they say. This priest, whom I'd known for many, many years and got on very well with him, he actually did leave the Catholic Church and had a series of jobs after, very menial jobs afterwards. But I did keep in touch with him, and only this year I sent him some Bible tracts. I told him he needs to be born again, and I waited for a response. And oh boy, did I get a response. About a week later, he phoned me up and he said, "Have you lost your mind? You must be mad." And with that, he slammed down the telephone, and I haven't heard from him since. Correction, he actually phoned me last night, but he didn't mention it at all. So I will get back to him, and I'll witness him again, and I'll see what happens. And I pray that he will come out of it as other clergy will as well. This is the intention of this ministry, Ex-Catholics for Christ, to get as many out of it as possible.
Absolutely. And I just say one other thing, if I may. We do not hold to this new evangelical view that Catholics who become Christians can remain in the Roman Catholic Church. We refute that totally. Unless you've been in the Roman Catholic Church, you have no understanding of what sort of system it is. If you have received Christ as your Saviour, if you've repented of your sins and truly trust him, you must leave the Roman Catholic Church as soon as possible. We do not believe you can remain in that system witnessing to people. It is too powerful and too strong for you. We would certainly suggest, if you have received Christ, please leave that church as soon as possible.